And now we're really looking at the body of the return. This is really where you'll start entering the detailed information about this taxpayer and spouse and all that. And you'll go through this list that we have here. And you'll notice that I have a list of all these forms that are added to the return. And that's because these are the forms that I've modified in the estimator. And it kind of guides you through here. It tells you to start right here because the rest has been completed. Everything you see with a green check mark, and that means that that page is pretty much complete, right? Use the information that you entered previously on the estimator page, on the refund estimator, to fill this out. And then at this point, all you have to do is complete everything that's missing, everything that doesn't have a green check mark. By the way, if you have to go back, let's say you forgot something. The taxpayer he brought over another W-2. Well, actually, you can add a W-2 from here directly, so maybe that's not the best example. But let's say they have another schedule or something that I didn't previously select. How do I go about adding that other form? Well, that means you have to go back to the estimator. It's up top here, and then add that form or add the information for that form. Scroll through this list or through this page and look for the information you want to enter. If it's another type of form, just select it from here. And then once you click on Save, it kind of takes you back to this estimate thing, right? But you don't have to go through this process again of clicking next through all this. Instead, you can just click on the name, as I said. You can click on this, and it takes you back to the body of the return. See? So you don't have to, if you need to make a modification, you don't have to go through these pages of estimates again. This is really kind of like for the taxpayer's information, so that you can give them this estimate and let them know what the deal is, even before you start entering the real data. But if you know that, even if you know that the taxpayer doesn't want this, if the taxpayer for sure is going to be doing business at your tax office, then you don't necessarily have to go through these pages with all the estimated fees and all that. You can just simply click on the name and get right into entering information for this tax return. So let's do that now. Let's start off with where the program tells me we have to start off, and that's the taxpayer's information. I'll click on the Edit button. Everything that I've entered so far is in there, but there are some areas that are missing, so let's start entering in some details here. Starting with the social, occupation, let's say that, oops, that's a typo. Say that they're a banker. Email, very important. You want to capture that information. Oh, looks like stuff was replaced using, that's actually a good warning. Stuff was replaced using my auto-chrome fill. So be aware of that. If you have auto-fill using on your browser, be cautious of that because maybe, if you enter in an email address, it'll think it's you, like your info, and it'll want to fill out the rest, like the name, and it even filled out the street for me, All this stuff was filled out by my browser's autofill. So that's something maybe you want to deactivate or just be aware of when you're entering information, since this is, a web browser-based tax preparation software. But for now, we'll move forward. The taxpayer's PIN, very important. They need that. The identity theft PIN, if by chance they've been a victim of identity theft, that means that the IRS has given them a PIN. So this is where you would enter that information. And then ID information, which was new for this current tax season. The IRS now is cross-referencing ID info. So I'll enter in something in there. Expiration date, let's say 2017. Issue date, let's say 2013. All right, now the taxpayer's address information, and this was filled out by my autofill. But what I'll do is I'll jump right into. I'll leave the street, that's fine, but I'll jump right to the zip code, enter in a zip code here, and notice that the city and state was filled out automatically for me. So I recommend the same. Don't worry about filling out that information. Just go right to the zip code and let the program do the work for you. And then cell phone information, this is important, especially if you want to send a text message to the taxpayer right through the program itself. This is something that Multi-Site Online allows you to do. Send a text message to this taxpayer, but the only requirements to do that is that you need their cell phone information, of course, and you also need their cell phone carrier. That's how we route this text message through the internet. And we have a list here of all the carriers within the U.S. You can browse through this list, or you can just begin to type away. There we are, and it'll do it for you. It'll autofill it for you. So were you or your spouse a U.S. citizen? Yeah, sure, we'll enter that information. Here we have some combat zone info. If by chance the taxpayer was involved in some sort of military conflict, you can enter that information here. And then we have some other questions that, sometimes do not apply, but sometimes may apply for this particular taxpayer. So be sure to review these, make sure everything is correct. But in most cases, we fill this out with kind of like the basics. We fill this out with the most common answers for your general taxpayer. If they're different, naturally, you can modify these. But for now, I'll click on Save, and there we are. There's our taxpayer. So now the program is guiding me to the next step, the spouse's information. So let's start entering in some info here. All right. Oops. The program, if you are missing a number, the program will tell you it's invalid. I think I'm just missing a digit. There we are. Cell phone as well, if you want to do text message. And I'll say that they're a Verizon customer. I'll say that their emails at gmail.com. Taxpayer or spouse's PIN as well, that's needed. ID. Oops, expired date. Let's change that to 2018. And let's enter in 2013 as the issue date. And again, these questions down below. We'll leave that as is. Click on Save. And now we're in the dependents area. So I'm just going to go through these one by one and enter some information. Hey, let's make this pretty easy. Date of birth. Let's say they're a youngin, 23. And then these questions here, very important to complete this. What's the relationship of the dependent to you, son, daughter, or any other types of relationships that we see here? Choose daughter for this one. How many months did the dependent live with the taxpayer? We'll choose 12, the full year. Lived with the taxpayer completely. And they are under the age of 19, so that's good. And there's no exemptions to be claimed. So we'll just click on Save. Simple as that. And we have some other ones that we said that there were 3 dependents. So the only one that we have here is dependent 1. Let's add a few other ones. Let's say that this one is a bit older. Let's say 97. Our student. There we are. Oh, actually, there you go. Student under the age of 24. And then one final one. Child number 3. And there, let's say, in the middle somewhere. There we are. And there are the dependents. Okay, so now wage info. We said we had some earnings on the W-2. We'll select if it's the taxpayer or spouse. That will complete some information for us using this radio button. I said that it was the taxpayer before, so now the taxpayer's SSN and the address has been filled out for us. So all we have to do is fill out the rest. There we are. Oh, and by the way, I should mention that every time the EIN, this is saved in a database. So every time you enter in an EIN that you entered previously, the info would auto-populate in here. This info is pretty garbled, so let me enter in something that makes a bit more sense here. And some sort of address. And I'll also say I'll change this since they are a Georgia resident. Change that to that. There we go. And now some wages. Let's say it was what, 20,000? I don't remember exactly the federal withheld, but that's okay because let's see, maybe it'll change a bit. So in fact, I'll make sure that it changes just so that we can see a page that compares the estimated information with the actual data. We'll see how that works. So we'll modify that a bit here. Any other information here? There may be, when it comes to retirement, you just want to follow the W-2. That's the good thing about the software. We try to replicate the paper form as much as we can so that the information, the form that you're looking at should just be, you take that form, look at the info, and all you have to do is replicate it on here. Oh, and I said that they had some state income as well, so I'll enter that here, and let's say that cool 1,000 for state withheld. All right, so we'll click on Save at this point. We have our gambling winnings. I'll click on Add for that. This was the spouse, I believe, so I'll choose spouse there. The federal EIN, where the that phone number, and the information about the payer. And I'll just keep using this Georgia one for now. I think the winnings were 2,000 and date one, let's say that. And you would fill this out, of course, with as much, all the information that you see in the form itself. You would just fill this out. And let's see what else here. I think I didn't enter in any withholding for this one, so I'll just leave it like this for now. Oh, we had some unemployment, so I'll add that as well. Payer's name, I'll say it's the taxpayer that got that. And state of Georgia, the address, and we'll keep using that same zip code. And I think it was 2,000 is what I said before. Maybe, oops, and the withholding of 350, I believe, is what I said. Oh, and the EIN. Oh, I should have shown you that. Let me show that again, actually. I'm going to go back to my 1099G. Here it is right here, the one that I've created. Click on the Edit button. And if I click on Save, the program is going to tell me if there's anything that's really important, something that's missing that's required. And I can click OK to, to continue anyway, to basically get out of here. Or I can click on Cancel, and the program will show me, it takes me to the first one that I need to enter, and it's going to show me in red the other one, any of the other ones that are missing. So let me enter in a FEIN. There we are. And I'll say that this was the state of Georgia. There we go. We're just going to keep going down this list. Let's say that this was from the taxpayer. And I forget this one. Let's say, I think it was around 1,500. 1,500 for that. What else do we have to fill out here? I think the code is 4, if I'm not mistaken. And I'll say that it was just an IRA. And I think this is the basics, at least. Again, you just want to follow the form and fill this out as using the form that you have in front of you. But I think those are at least the minimum. Oh, the EIN. Yep. Let's enter something in there. Invalid EIN. I think you have a digit too much. Hopefully that should work. There we go. Schedule C. Let's talk about that home business. If I remember correctly, this was for the spouse, principal business or profession. I think it was childcare is what we were working on. Business code. If you click on this, it'll give you a list of all the business codes. And, you know, one of the things about I like about the software being forms-based is that you can use one of my favorite tools, Control F for find. So now, you know, if you need to find a particular type of business code, you can use the number, you could use the description. It's going to search through everything using this Control F or for Control Find, you know. So let's see what we can find here. Child, and there we go. As simple as that. You click on it, and there we go. Some programs, you know, they're not as intuitive when it comes to finding that information. But with that Control F, as in Frank, to do the find, I think it's pretty easy to do that. Business name I'll leave blank because, you know, I would say that this is her home kind of like business. She doesn't really have an official name. Definitely doesn't have an employer ID. I will say that she does it, enter in her home address for that. Enter in zip code. I will say that they just use cash. They did materially participate in that. Yes, that. And what else is needed typically for Schedule C? Oh, yes, was your investment in this business at risk? In most cases, yes. And you'll notice at the bottom we have some pages here that we have to complete, or at least take a look at. I mean, we haven't even entered in the wages or the income yet for this. That's on the next page, so I'll click on Next here. Gross sales. Let's say, I forget exactly what it was. Let's enter in 2,000. Oops, not that much. 2,000. And any expenses that they may have had for this home business, you can enter that information here. And also the assets, very common when using the Schedule C. If they have any assets that they need to add, that's near the bottom. Go here, click the link below to add an asset for depreciation. So let's do that. Let's add a couple of assets here that they've purchased. Description of the asset. Let's say that they bought a crib for their home child care service. It was placed into service in 2015 February. And the class of asset, that'll determine, you know, the depreciation amounts, so, or the lifespan of the depreciation. I think furniture and fixtures will do it for that one. And then the cost of that asset. How much did that crib cost? Let's say it was maybe $250, $250 for the state. And there we are. And in most cases, if it's just a basic asset that you're doing, this is really all you have to do. The program will take care of the depreciation itself. There are some other options here. If it's a sale or any of these other kind of like situations that may apply, you can enter that info here. But other than that, you can click Save at this point, and we are good. If we look at the bottom here, there's our crib, and you could add any additional assets that you may need to using this link here. Very straightforward when it comes to that. Now, let's say that they have a vehicle as well. I'll move forward. Cost of goods sold, you know, if that's the case, you could enter the information there. But on the fourth page, that's where we could enter in vehicle mileage if they did use their vehicle for their home business. So let's enter in some dates here. When the vehicle was placed into service, the miles driven, let's say 20,000. Commuting miles, those do not depreciate. You can't claim those miles. So we'll get rid of some of that. There we are. And miles for other uses if that were the case. And then some other questions. We do have to fill out these questions to make sure that this is complete. Was your vehicle available during off hours? In other words, you know, did they use this vehicle for their business and also for personal use? I'll say that, yeah, they were doing that. Do they have another vehicle? I'll say no for that one. But, you know, you would answer these questions depending on the situation of the taxpayer. Do you have evidence to support your deductions? We'll choose yes for that. And is this evidence written? You definitely want to choose yes for that, assuming that that's the situation, right? And then we have other areas for other vehicles if that's the case. But at this point, we'll say it's just the one car. We'll click on Save. And we're good when it comes to that. Now, we did say that there was child care, or the dependents had, there were expenses for that child care for the dependents. So let's enter in some information about that. The daycare name, let's say Babysitting Inc. Generic one available. EIN, say that they have an EIN here. That's their EIN. There we are. And the amount paid, I think it was $2,000 that I said, but let's see what happens. Oops, that's not what I meant to do at all. There we are. And again, the zip code. And then here, this is where we could select, okay, how much was exactly spent for each one of your dependents. There they are listed out in front of us. So I'll say that the young one had 1,000 and the other one had the other 1,000. I think number 2 was a student, so they didn't need any care. And then these other questions, if the situation does apply, you can enter this, you can fill that out. But other than that, we'll click on Save. Your very basic tax return. This is number 2. We'll say that no, they did not claim this. Yes, they were enrolled. Yes, they did do this. And no, they were not convicted. And the tuition, oh gosh, let's see. Let's say 5,000, just to enter in something in here. Materials, 1,000. And there we are. And the name of the school. The address. Like how it just takes you right to the zip code. Don't have to worry about any of this other stuff. Did they receive a 1098-T? Very good. And this is for a second educational. If there's another school, we could take that. And at the very bottom, check this box. If you do not want to apply for the credits above and want to apply for the tuition and fees deduction instead, and more information is about that here. So if that's the case, if that's the situation for that taxpayer wants to do, you can click that, but I'll leave that box blank for now. We'll click on Save. Oops. Let me go back here because I did miss something apparently. Click on Edit. Oh wait, that's not the one I wanted. Click on Cancel. Actually, let me just remove this and go back. Where was it? Here, I believe. So where does it want me to go? Aha. See how I just let the program take me to where I need to go to fill this out? Now we're good. Now I know that all the areas that are required for the IRS are filled out. And the same thing will happen with this 8867. Actually, this is one that I typically like to use, that feature, to just save it, let the program tell me what's missing, and I can complete it. Naturally, once you do go through this process a few times, you'll know exactly how to fill this out. I'm sure all of you in the room are professional tax preparers. You know more about taxes than I do. But I sometimes depend on the program to guide me through this process. And then here we have all the dependents that qualify. So I'll just fill this out with the appropriate information. Oh, I'll choose no for that one. And then your due diligence area. These are the questions that you have to ask the taxpayer. Yes, the information was provided by the taxpayer and reasonably obtained by me. Does not, and it marks some of them automatically for common ones, for the ones that typically apply. But again, if the situation were different, you can just change it to match the situation that the taxpayer has. I'll say that yes, I did my security questions. I asked any information that I had to do my due diligence. I documented everything. And when it comes to the residency of the child, I use the school records. When it comes to any other documents, I'll say that I use the business license. Naturally, you'd want to select whatever you did use to confirm that information. Now if I click on Save here, looks like we're good. And head of household income, this was the spouse. And the employer's name, let's say Billy Lou. Income earned, I think it was $2,000. There we are, simple as that. Oh, let's try that again. Oh, maybe I had a wrong amount. There we go. I think it was missing the plus the dollar sign, but then it added it automatically. And then, of course, we have to fill out our healthcare coverage, or the taxpayer's healthcare coverage. The easiest one, of course, is if they had coverage through their employer. That would mean just marking the box A. And that's really the only thing you have to worry about if that's the situation. Now, if they did purchase their health insurance through the marketplace, that means the D. That means they got a 1095A, and you would select letter D. And then at the bottom, you'll see all these areas that you need to fill out. You know, when it comes to the coverage, when exactly did they have coverage through the marketplace? When were they out of coverage? You would enter that information. If they have any exemptions, here's the exemption area where you can choose if they're exempt for certain months or for the entire year. You can select these boxes. From what I hear from our tax preparers, this area is pretty straightforward. It's been very easy to use. So you can click on Save at that point. And it looks like we're getting really down to the nitty-gritty here. We're getting down to the very end. The information that I entered on the W-2 transfers over to the Georgia. I do have a non-resident or for Delaware. If by chance you need to get rid of that. Oh, let me go back. I think I skipped ahead. Let me go back to where we were. If by chance you need to modify anything, which in some cases you have to, if they have to delete something, notice that there's the delete buttons or options available throughout these returns. And when it comes to the state, if you need to get rid of something, just click on the change button. It'll take you back to kind of like the estimator, and then you can just remove it if that's the case. All right? So be aware of, you know, when you're working with a return, your main areas are going to be this body of the tax return and the estimator page. Those are kind of like the areas you'll be jumping back and forth from, depending on what you need to do. And let's take a look at this Georgia 500. It kind of just gives you the areas to make adjustments, to make any modifications based on the state. But other than that, it will move over all the information that you entered on the W-2. For that state, all that stuff transfers automatically. So if I were to click Save here and then click on Calculate, which is the final step, assuming that you filled out everything, you would click on the Calculate button, and the program, look what it does, it shows you any information that's missing or any errors that you may have to fix at the very bottom in red. And the good thing is that you don't have to track down this error. Instead, you can just click on the link that it provides, and it takes you to where you need to go to make that information. So it looks like I had this. I just have to enter in, I had a 1098T, which means that I have to enter in a federal ID number. So enter in something in there, hopefully a good one. There we are. Now if we click on Save, it takes us back. Let's recalculate this guy, see if there's anything that we need to fix. And no, there's not.